Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back to another Snowbreak video, and today I'm going to talk about the latest story for Snowbreak Containment Zone. So if you have not done the latest story yet, make sure you do that, as this video will contain some spoilers. Now, this chapter compared to the last chapter was not as action-packed. Last chapter was full of action. We had the characters duking it out with one of the main villains, Rozan. In this chapter, instead of an action-packed fest, we basically get the adjutant and crew trying to survive a natural disaster caused by the main baddie, Sophie. The plot of this chapter is that Sophie is trying to flood this city called Longyan, which is based off of the city of Venice in Italy. Both of them are cities of water. So Sophie is trying to flood the city because she's trying to prove a point to the adjutant, and that point is that humanity is weak and they need to bow down before gods like herself. One of the main themes of this chapter anyways is that letting go of the past can help you grow. And another theme in this chapter is a kind of like a clash of the ideologies. Once again, the adjutant wants to save humanity by doing what he can, saving his harem, his community, while Sophie and Etta want to save humanity as quickly as possible. And they're basically just, forcing everybody into this weird, false, heavenly paradise that is just full of fakery. Now, one of the biggest bombshells in this chapter is that Sophie is actually trying to betray Etta. Now, both of their goals are very similar, but there is a pretty big difference. Etta wants to put all of humanity into Valhalla, which is basically like a fake virtual heaven, while Sophie is revealed to want to put every individual soul in the world of Snowbreak and have them go into their own personal heaven. I don't think the adjutant knows that Sophie is trying to betray Etta. We know this because Sophie was talking to herself, basically saying that she's using Etta for her goals, and right now she's basically, playing Etta as a fiddle. But the adjutant is aware of Sophie's goal of creating an individual heaven for each person in the world of Snowbreak. And the adjutant basically retorts by saying that that is impossible because that's going to take a huge amount of processing power that not even Etta or any other AI in the world of Snowbreak could even do. But Sophie basically claims that it is possible. And throughout the chapter, Sophie is trying to convince the adjutant to join her side, probably because the adjutant is very special, and with his power, they probably could make this possible. But once again, Sophie is just kind of being vague on how she could really achieve this goal, which is one of the reasons why the adjutant is not really, going with that plan. Towards the end of the chapter, the adjutant does go into the inner mind of Sophie because Sophie wants to show him what an individual paradise would look like. And Sophie basically used this NPC by the name of Circe. I'll talk about her later. But basically, when Circe goes to sleep towards the end of the chapter, Sophie basically, I think, snatched her soul and put her into her own individual heaven. And the adjutant did get to witness this. But at the end of the day, it is just a world of fakery, right? So the adjutant basically tells Circe that, you should probably leave this fake heaven because there's literally nothing here. And Circe does eventually leave this false heaven, and that kind of upsets Sophie quite a lot. But once again, a clash of ideologies. Since we do know that Sophie is trying to betray Etta, maybe this could be a setup of Sophie joining the Heimdall force later in the future. Maybe Etta herself will be the big bad that we all have to take out, because we do have a good Etta on her side. There's many different Ettas in the world of Snowbreak. There's the bad Etta, which is the main evil Etta, and then there's a good teenage Etta on our side. So maybe Etta herself will basically be the big bad villain that we have to take out, and Sophie could probably join our side, but who really knows? Now, with any Snowbreak chapter, the characters do get some character growth. We get Acacia getting her character growth, and we also get Marian getting her character growth as well. Now, I do think Acacia's character growth was a little bit more grander than Marian's. I'm not saying that Marian's is bad. Hers is pretty good, but Acacia, I think she got pretty much most of the spotlight in this chapter. Now, one of the main themes of this chapter is letting go of the past will help you grow further into a better human. In the beginning of the chapter, it did a pretty good job of foreshadowing Acacia's inner psyche. When the adjutant and crew were on a boat to Lucalan, the adjutant asks Acacia why didn't she bring any of her handheld games to the trip, and Acacia replies that she is scared that those handheld games would break, since Acacia is a human from the ancient past that got frozen. So she's very scared that her handheld gaming devices will break, because since she's in the far future, she can't really exactly repair them since they're very old and ancient. Also, in the beginning of the chapter, when Frisia was doing her science show in the Hemdall Force, she was showing off Acacia's new exosuit, and when Acacia got on stage, she didn't utilize the full power of her exosuit because she didn't grow older. And Professor Frisia theorizes that there is something psychologically going on in Acacia's mind that's preventing her from utilizing the full power of the suit, because when Acacia grows older, she's using the full power of the suit. So when the adjutant goes to Lucalan, Professor Frisia basically tells the adjutant that he should look after Acacia's mental well-being because something is not right there. Now, one of my favorite reasons why Acacia's character growth was really good, or at least one of my favorite parts in this growth, was there were references to other things, right? There was a reference to Back to the Future, right? There was like a toy time machine in the shape of a vehicle. There was also a Cuphead reference. There was also a Tamagotchi reference. So seeing all those references were pretty cool. Now, during Acacia's character growth arc, there is a main villain in her arc. Not only just in her arc, but just like a main villain in the whole chapter. It's not just Sophia and the tsunami, but there is a main villain, and that main villain was Circe, the character I talked about in the very beginning. Now, Circe is also another character that does cling to the past, just like Acacia. And because Circe clings to the past, she ends up doing some pretty extreme things later on. Circe herself is an antagonist, but she's an antagonist with actual good intentions. Fun fact about Circe, her name has Greek and Persian roots, and her name means to bind a star, which is pretty interesting. Now, some quick backstory on Circe. She is a manifestation that is not very combat oriented. She's more like a spy. One of her main abilities is to manipulate the minds of people using some type of plant that she has to grow, and this plant will spray pink mist, and this pink mist will basically like give the person a suggestion that Circe suggests. She does have a relationship with the adjutant. 6 years ago, she was one of the adjutant's like main girls, kind of, and the adjutant asked Circe if he wants to accompany him on a dangerous mission. However, Circe is a pretty normal girl, right? As I said before, she has no combat capabilities, but she was only really working for the military just so she could secure her own future. So she declines the adjutant, and for the past 6 years, she has felt very guilty for declining the adjutant on his dangerous mission to Mistletoe Station. And since Circe is helping the adjutant locate Sophie, Circe has an extreme idea in which she will use her manipulation ability, manipulate hundreds and thousands of innocent civilians, put them in a specific location. That way, that could lure out Sophia, since Sophia's goal is to flood the bitch. And if there's just a lot of people missing, Sophia might, try to find out and investigate what's going on. So the problem with that plan is that, well, she's basically using civilians as bait. And number two, if the plan goes wrong, those civilians could die. And when the adjutant finds out about this crazy idea, he basically kind of snaps. But Circe basically replies and says that the people that she manipulated are elderly, so they were going to die anyways. And not to mention, some of the other people she manipulated were also cult members of Sophia, and she also states that her manipulation ability can also make people feel very good. So even if they do die, they'll at least feel good before they die. And the adjutant kind of snaps at her. And when that happens, Cersei herself also kind of snaps, because she really thought that this was a good idea. She was really actually trying to help the adjutant. But when the adjutant snapped at her, that basically kind of broke her a little bit. And this caused her to flood. If you don't know what the term flood means in this case, when a manifestation floods, that basically means they lose control of their duelos alignment, their inner god, I guess. I don't remember the name of her god. I think her god was like the goddess of deceit or something, which is pretty interesting. But she is a manipulative manifestation. But she does go a little berserk when the adjutant snaps. And when the adjutant sees this, he basically has to hug her, absorb her Titan to prevent her from, going berserk. And once that happens, Cersei, calms down a little bit and once again tries to help the adjutant. The adjutant tells her that you need to stop manipulating these people. But Cersei tells him that her manipulation ability is very hard to break, because in order for her manipulation ability to stop, at least one person that has been manipulated by her has to break free themselves. And it's basically kind of like a chain reaction, at least. So only one person from the group of civilians has to break free. However, because these civilians are very weak-minded, that's never going to happen. So Acacia steps in, because one of the suggestions that Cersei uses to manipulate these people is that the early 2000s was such a good time. And Cersei basically set it up this weird kind of retro fair that Acacia really liked. So Acacia is basically like the only person that could potentially help these civilians break free from the spell. But it's also very risky, because Acacia herself has to fall under this spell of manipulation and break free. Since this is a risky operation, the adjutant does put himself into Acacia's subconscious in order to help Acacia break free, because as long as one person breaks free from Cersei's spell, everyone else will also be able to break free as well. So once Acacia gets manipulated, she basically enjoys the retro fair. The adjutant is also with her, trying to help her awaken from this trance, because if she awakens, then the other civilians will awaken, and they basically have some fun. And then once Acacia goes deeper into her subconscious, she's realizing that she's really clinging to the past way too often. And she basically tries to remember what the adjutant tells her, and that's basically try to enjoy the present, try to find something enjoyable in the present. And for Acacia's case, that's the adjutant. And once she realizes it's the adjutant that she's really excited about, she stops clinging to the past and breaks free from the manipulation spell, and thus also saving the other civilians that is under the spell. And Acacia is now embracing her adult form. A funny gag also happens too when the adjutant pets the grown-up Acacia. He's so used to Acacia being short that he accidentally grabbed some titty, which is pretty funny. Anyways, that is basically like the whole part of Acacia's character growth. She basically has to fall under a spell, and then, once she breaks out of the spell, she realizes that she should stop clinging to the past and, embrace her future, embrace the present. Cersei is also another character that is clinging to the past as well. Cersei was feeling very guilty for declining the adjutant for his dangerous mission, which is why Cersei was very extreme on trying to locate Sophie. Acacia's character growth was pretty long. I would say it's longer than Marian's. Marian's was slightly shorter, but it was also like Marian's character growth was a little bit more simpler. Marian's character growth is kind of similar to Clarina's. You got two rich girls that were very coddled by their family members. Clarina was coddled by her aunt, while Marian was coddled by both her mom and her dad. I think it was mostly just her mom for Marian's case. But the difference between both of these girls is that Clarina was a little bit more innocent and naive, while Marian was, she was innocent, but she wasn't really as naive. Marian does have an older sister, so she did have somebody that she could talk to, share secrets with, while Clarina was basically just by herself. She was basically raised by her aunt majority of her life. Speaking of Marian's sister, she is the second important NPC that we meet in this chapter, and she was also pretty vital to Marian's character growth, as it seems that Madeline herself was pretty supportive of Marian, while their mom wasn't really that supportive of Marian. Marian's mom was basically very coddly towards Marian. Madeline was also the reason how we managed to have a meeting with Marian's mom, Mrs. Adiela. I can't pronounce that Italian name, but Marian's mom. We have a meeting with Marian's mom thanks to Madeline, Marian's sister. The adjutant and Marian, well, it's mostly the adjutant, but the adjutant tells Marian's mom that Sophie is planning to flood this bitch, and one good idea could be is to relocate the citizens of Lucalan to another area, but the main problem is that those areas are owned by other rich people. So Marian suggests that she should be the head of the household because she is a Yggdrasil operative, and that could help influence the other families to open up their borders, while the adjutant says that he should have a covenant with Marian because since the adjutant is a hero, that could also influence the rich families to open up their borders. And Marian's mom, I'm gonna just say Marian's mom. Marian's mom basically agrees to this idea. She's very happy about this. However, Madeline, Marian's sister, tells Marian that their mom has another plan. Another plan. And Marian's mom plans to send Marian to a very far isolated island so that way she can stay safe from the flood. However, Marian gets upset over this because Marian actually thought that she finally got the recognition from her parents, since her parents agreed to her being the head of the house. Here's some quick backstory on Marian herself. Now, the reason why Marian is getting coddled by her mom is because Marian, as a child, had walking issues. It was very difficult for her to walk. And as a child, she had an idea to practice walking. And she practices walking. She does very well. So she ends up walking to her sister's 12th birthday party. And, you know, she was impressing her parents and the crowd for a bit until she fell ungracefully and started crying. And from that point on, Marian's mom started coddling her. Marian is upset that her mom wants to send her to a faraway island, so she basically goes to her mom with the adjutant and basically tells her mom, fuck you, I'm a grown woman now, I'm the head of the house now, and Marian's mom gets very upset and calls security. However, Madeline, being the best support that we've got, she basically called a speedboat and let us use that speedboat to get away from the security. Madeline was also the reason how we managed to find out that Cersei was manipulating a lot of people. Keep in mind that during the meeting with Marian's mom, Cersei was with us since she did agree to help us locate Sophie. But later on, at one point, Cersei does go missing, and while Marian's family was holding a party to announce the new head of the house, Marian, also to announce the covenant between Marian and the adjutant, Madeline notices that there were a lot of guests missing, and she also pointed out that Cersei was missing as well. So Madeline was kind of the MVP this chapter, honestly. Madeline was also the character that gave Marian the new exosuit towards the end of the chapter. When Marian was getting a phone call from her mom asking where she at, Marian basically yells at her mom so hard that her mom kind of backed down, and Marian basically ordered her family's company to, you know, start evacuating the citizens and to try to flee this upcoming tsunami. And right after that phone call, Madeline basically came up and delivered Marian the new exosuit. And along with the new exosuit, there was a letter from her dad. The letter basically states that her dad did kind of believe in her and was kind of just waiting for her to bloom in order to give her this exosuit. And towards the end of the letter, Madeline also has a note that basically says that she modified the suit, which is why the exosuit kind of looks like a bondage outfit. So it's not like her parents gave her like a bondage outfit or anything, but it was just Madeline herself that, that gave her that. Since they're both sisters, it's not that it's not that weird since they're both sisters. They probably shared all types of secrets with one another. As I said earlier, Marian's character growth wasn't really all that grand. It was basically just her, telling her mom off, and that's basically it. Still pretty cool nonetheless. It was really, satisfying to see Marian stand up to her mom. There is another important NPC that we meet in this chapter. That NPC is named Longyan. She's basically the fox mommy that got revealed at the offline Snowbreak event. Now, we heard about Longyan from Marian's mom because when we were telling her about the plan to evacuate the citizens, Marian's mom states that she is going to contact Longyan, and she states that Longyan is a pretty mysterious person. We meet Longyan during our investigation on where the citizens went, and Longyan was also the only other person that was not manipulated by Cersei's. I don't think I mentioned this before, but with Cersei's manipulation, it can only work on the weak-minded. When the adjutant and crew were exposed to the pink mist, it didn't actually work on them at first, but when they found Cersei in that area, they kind of but they pretended to be manipulated by the mist, so they kind of just went along with the retro fair that was going on in that area. Longyan also has her own plan to stop the upcoming flood that Sophie is trying to do, and her plan was to basically send thousands of freezing units at the flood. The city of Lukalon, they kind of have like these robotic freezing units that's kind of there to help regulate the water in the city, and her plan was basically just to throw a bunch of them shits at the flood. They kind of don't work because the tsunami is just so fucking massive that even when they contact with the ice, it basically just breaks the ice. But on the other hand, when the adjutant was trying to stop the tsunami, he gets an idea. He uses his Titagen and his science brain to basically freeze the whole tsunami, which was pretty epic. As I stated earlier, the whole plot of this was basically like the adjutant and a bunch of other small factions or other individuals trying to stop this upcoming tsunami. Sophie herself didn't really do much other than, well, summoning the flood. That's basically about it, right? It was basically just, towards the end of the chapter, when the flood does happen, the adjutant uses a wall instead. And when the second flood comes, which is a much more bigger flood, it was basically just a tsunami at that point, the adjutant basically gets an idea to freeze the whole tsunami once he sees Longyan's freezing units trying to freeze the tsunami, but they were much more weaker. And with the adjutant's Titagen, he basically used his Titagen plus his science brain to freeze the tsunami. Also, since I did say that Cersei is kind of like a main antagonist here, the first time that the adjutant stops the flood, he kind of gets very tired, and Cersei does notice this, so she has another bright idea to go berserk again, and this time we do have a boss battle with her, and after the boss fight, the adjutant absorbs his Titagen, and then at that point, even then, the adjutant was kind of doubtful that he could stop this upcoming tsunami until he sees Longyan throwing freezing units at the tsunami, and he's basically like, okay, well, I'll just try to freeze this bitch, and he does that, and that's basically it. Overall, pretty interesting chapter. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Did you like this chapter? What was your favorite part in this chapter? And I will see you guys later.
Bye bye now. Come again soon.